ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Awkward Question Time. Please welcome your host, Alex Leam.
Hello and welcome to Awkward Question Time with me, Alex Leam, the show where I take a panel of comedians and subject them to an hour's worth of awkward and stupid questions. Tonight's show is a bit different. A, we're on a Saturday, and B, we are part of Who at Hoylake's special online festival, Mind Warp, all in aid of mind. So the QR code that is just here, that's good. Yes, I've managed to point in the right direction. If you scan that tonight, that'll take you through to donations for Mind. So none of it's coming to us. It's all going to a very worthy cause. But the usual rules do apply. So not all of the awkward questions are going to come from me. They are on a Doctor Who theme, but we'd like some from you too, please. So submit your questions for the panel. More cringeworthy, the better, and feel free to answer along with us. Give us a share, a retweet, or subscribe on YouTube. More people watching than usual, I dare say. So I want to use this opportunity to plug my own social media. What the hell? At Alex Leam Stand Up, at Twitter, at Alex Leam, and search Alex Leam on YouTube. If you're not watching live and you're watching the replay, let us know where and at what time you're watching, but do join us live Sunday nights at 8:30. So it's time now to bring on our panel. And what a panel we have tonight. Please welcome Toby Haydock, Robin Ince, and Alan Lear. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Good evening, Alex.
Right, I've got a question straight away. You've disturbed the fact I'm only halfway through a Midsummer Murders episode, right? Callie's just got a school reunion, and there's someone who's had a child, and we don't know there's a mystery because the person stays hidden throughout the episode, right? Does anyone know actually what the secret is? It's the one involving the guy who's got the knife grinding, and we're meant to think might be the killer, but it's obviously not him. It may well be someone like John Standing, though I don't reckon John Standing will make it through the first hour. So can anyone tell me what the answer is to that? Because I'm not going to find out the second hour. And from what I've heard, ITV3 very rarely show Midsummer Murders.
Well, any thoughts?
Well, John Standing didn't even make it alive through the first episode of Game of Thrones. So I think he's now specialising in being... He's going to be important because he's played by the Right Honourable John Standing, but John isn't standing for very long.
Do you know what? I'm almost looking forward. I'm not looking forward to him dying, but I am looking forward to your obituary for him, Toby, because they are some of my favourite obituaries.
I don't know if I'll get the Right Honourable John Standing because he's got royal blood in him, of course, and he's never been in Doctor Who. So I mean, I do.
That cuts out nearly 7% of all British actors. You're unable to actually do. Oh my God.
If we're playing British actors, guess who? We'd really narrow it down right now, wouldn't we? Half the board would be down. So if anyone throughout the show does have a stab at what the plot is for Robin, then let us know, please, in the comments. We'll come to our first question. We're starting nice and easy, not nice and steady. What gadget from all of Doctor Who history would you most like to have in real life? So Robin, we'll come to you first on this one because the other two look really deep in thought.
Oh yeah, because they know what they're talking about, whereas of course they know that all I can say is a sonic screwdriver because they know full well that I'm far less learned than they are. It's hard, isn't it? Because I think, do you know what? A yo-yo. I would very happily have a Tom Baker yo-yo. I think I always enjoyed. It's odd going back to the shows. There's not as much rummaging around in his pockets as I remember as a child, because of course a 25-minute episode when you're 7 years old is the equivalent of 2 years by the time it's a different. So that was, and so I remember him, and I'll have a yo-yo.
Yo-yo, okay.
He did have a yo-yo in a couple of them, didn't he? I'm sure he used one. Well, there's that lovely episode where I presume it's probably. Oh man, what was the follow-up to Face of Evil? But there's
Robots of Death.
Robots of Death starts with Leela believing that she has to use the yo-yo to keep the TARDIS going, and Tom Baker says, "Oh, I thought it was just a bit of fun," and it's beautifully acted.
Yeah, it is. It's superb. I think he might also have one in the. Does he have one in the Hand of Fear when they come out the TARDIS? I think he might, but definitely in the Robots of Death, because she says it will not affect this, and he goes, "Oh no!" Yeah, it's a brilliant scene.
And also, you can tell
she says,
by my
"I
choice.
thought it made the magic work."
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. But you've also discovered why I would never be on Antiques Roadshow. because merely by choosing a yo-yo, I've shown. Why have you chosen, as Ricky Tomlinson did by the way, if you're wondering, I'm currently living with my dad, which is why I've seen all of these shows. So I'm at Midsummer Murders, all of these things, which means that all the adverts I see on television are basically for incontinence, dead donkeys, funerals, and then every now and again, for a little bit of variety, you get one for constipation as well. But I saw Ricky Tomlinson. He spent 20 quid on a Toby jug of Jimmy Durante. Of course, that went for a tenner in the end of the auction hall, and I think he was lucky. Jimmy Durante Toby jugs don't sell anymore.
Presumably with the recent death of Frank Windsor, you're not being sold funerals by him anymore, because that was very much his retirement, wasn't it?
The
I think you got
celebrity
a free
funeral
pen.
advert has ceased. They don't. They're not celebrity. They're now just normal people who don't want to fuss.
You see,
it always used to be either him or Michael Parkinson who'd give you a free pen for inquiring as to whether you were likely to die before the free pen arrived.
That's the point. Who's doing Wiltshire Farm Foods now Ronnie Corbett's died?
Again, it's just become people having a lovely time on their allotment, thinking about whether they prefer the shepherd's pie or the lasagna. It's become real, you know. Wiltshire Farm Foods as well. They don't need to. Their Yorkshire puddings don't need to be sold through celebrity. Just by people, genuine, real people, just really
sitting there eating their Yorkshire pudding scented meal, daydreaming of the day the equity card plops onto the mat.
See, I don't think the world's a better place. If I can't get my coffin endorsed by somebody who was in the Anedin line once, I don't want to know. Death's going to be bad enough as it is.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, we
if
will
the
all
guy
sign
who's
your
burying
coffin.
me
That's
hasn't
like
told
a
Kenneth Williams to shut up, then I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Toby,
what they found was that people were too keen to die. If you get a celebrity representative of death, people think, will it mean a chance on the last moment to see some kind of form of Frank Windsor? So they've had to stop having celebrities wooing you towards the light.
Okay, like a sort of siren at the beach, wooing you onto the rocks with anecdotes about Studio D at Lime Grove.
Well, that's absolutely right, because, of course, for a long time, what would happen is that everybody who signed up to a Windsor Life insurance scheme would be buried with one hand out of their coffin like Lenin, and at the end of the month, Carol Vorderman would just go down the line shaking hands with them all.
Toby, your gadget of choice, would it be a yo-yo?
No. Well, I think the yo-yo has already been taken, and I don't want to be in a tug of war with a yo-yo because that would probably spoil it. Although you probably go backwards and forwards a couple of times. Does the TARDIS count as a gadget?
No way.
Yeah.
If I had that sort of gadget,
well, why not?
That's like looking in the innovations catalogue and seeing them selling a lorry. That's not acceptable.
Am I not allowed to? Damn! If I'm not allowed to. I mean, the thing about the sonic screwdriver is it is all the gadgets rolled into one. I mean, I remember a time when it was just a screwdriver that could just do screwdrivery things like blow up landmines and and all those sorts of screwdrivery things. In the modern series, it can mend barbed wire. I think it can
do equations.
It can make BT broadband work when it's raining. I mean, it can do any amount of impossible and ridiculous things. So I prefer it when it could just do the screwdrivery things. I think I'd like a thermal lance, only because I think they make it sound like it's a gadget or a tool, but really I think it's a smuggled weapon. Do you know what I mean? It's like I've got the toolkit here, I've got the space hammer, and I've got the universal screws and the thermal lance, because I can't think what you'd use a thermal lance for that didn't involve going, I'm going to have to use the thermal lance to kill a Cyberman with. So in a way, I could pretend to be the lovely liberal peacenik that I like to think of myself as. But if somebody did something I disagreed with, I could stick a thermal lance in their chest and they would die. I go, well, I wasn't armed. I was having to improvise with a tool, which is a less severe form of murder.
Can I ask, what were the thermal lances in?
Now, they're definitely in the Doctor Who. There was a book, wasn't there? What was the book, Alan? The Doctor Who technical manual. And I think in Attack of the Cybermen, he has a thermal lance, isn't it? But he uses it to he sticks it in a Cyberman, and then he puts it in there's some space cocaine that's looked after by Faith Brown. You would never get this in any other show. This is why Doctor Who's the best. Faith Brown is really cold in the storehouse for the space cocaine, which she lives with. And the Doctor puts this thermal lance in there, which hasn't got much power left, and it gradually warms up. And when it hits a certain temperature, it blows up Cyberville. So I think that's probably and it may not even be called. I think it is called a thermal lance in Attack of the Cybermen, but I could be wrong.
I'm fairly sure it's a thermal. I love your description of it. It reminds me of that time in the late 90s when the British government was caught selling a super gun to Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And they said, no, it's not a super gun. It's just a really wide bore drain pipe and a lot of missiles.
Yeah.
I don't think it is for Boyles, Neil. I don't think it is. John Cooper, thermal lance sounds better than hot stick.
Well, yes, yes. Tom Baker's thermal lance would be probably do a certain amount of damage at Wood Lane in the late 1970s.
I had a feeling that somebody would pop up with the correction, Jason Thompson. That was
Sonic lance. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah,
right.
Someone also giving an early Sonic appearance. The Sonic was cutting through solid walls in the second appearance of the Dominators. So
yeah, the sort of thing screwdrivers do.
Yeah, John Cooper also found a way of making funerals appealing to Doctor Who fans of a certain age. Put Randalls in the coffin to suggest it's bigger on the inside.
I like it.
Nice. I like your thinking there, John. Alan, your gadget of choice.
Yeah, well, this is an easy one for me. I want the weird little forehead window that Bruno gets in the first series of New Doctor Who, where he clicks his fingers and a window opens onto his forebrain so he can download all the future information that he's going to use on the stock exchange, which is the only explanation I have for what's going on over Game Shop at the moment, incidentally. But the reason I want a big open window that pops open in my forehead is every time the news comes on, oh, Christ, here we go. There's a politician talking, open out the forebrain, and I'll get a little teaspoon and just start scooping bits of grey matter out until what he says starts to make sense. Then I can pop my head back shut again, and I'm good until 6 o'clock the next day.
Are you a self-harmer?
Well, technically, no, because there are no nerve endings in the brain.
Oh, okay. Would that stand up in court?
I don't know. I'd have to try it.
All right. Well, there's only one way to find out. Viewer questions keep coming in.
I've changed my mind.
Okay. What are you changing to?
I want to have the button that fades out Graham Norton doing audition shows. Because I would like to be able to turn that up and down, as happened in the first episode, obviously, of the Comeback Doctor Who with Christopher Eccleston, which is still one of my favourite things that ever, in terms of things that went wrong at the BBC, watching a whole scene with Billy Piper and presuming that at some point there was going to be a reveal involving Graham Norton, and then realising, oh no, someone has accidentally still got I can't remember what it was called, the Over the Rainbow show or whatever. It was a search for a kind of Dorothy and Wizard of Oz?
One of those. It was that era.
Sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd like to have that button so I could just fade it up and down during any Doctor Who episode.
Do you know, that was referenced.
I thought they'd made exactly the same mistake during the remake of Sherlock Holmes, but it turned out that was just the voice they were going with for Moriarty.
Do you know, they referenced that when Russell T Davies did the target bug of Rose. He mentioned that there was radio interference from Graham Norton on the radio happening, and you could hear that in the corridor.
Oh, he's made it canon. Beautiful.
Yeah, so he's made it canon.
Because, of course, the argument is because there is a big debate as to, whether the DVD and Blu-ray releases should be as transmitted, and so there shouldn't be any tinkering to, iron out any glitches or whatever. But as transmitted, Rose had Graham Norton in it, and a bit like the old bootlegs. I used to watch all the old bootlegs, and there are episodes that used to jump because, when you're my age, the first black and white episodes I saw, it looked like they'd been through a shedder and made of gravy, and also they shouldn't do that. And now that I watch them all crisp and sort of done up, they don't have quite the same charm as something that looks like it's been through a mangle. I don't know if in many years to come after, 3 Blu-ray box set releases of Christopher Eccleston, they'll go, and now finally we're releasing Rose as transmitted with the original untarnished Graham Norton cameo.
That's like, if any of you have watched there's a company I think called Brentwood in America that does these DVD box sets which are like 200 horror films that are out of copyright, and they're huge box sets, and they'll have things like Carnival of Souls and Night of the Living Dead and things like that, and then lots sometimes really intriguing, terrible old films that are a delight and fascinating, and then sometimes just rubbish. But what is great is the transfer is so bad that you really do feel like you're in a drive-in cinema that is currently burning down. And it's just got this, like, I think it's Circus of Horrors rather than Circus of Fear, but I might get that. Actually, Circus of Horrors with Anton Differing. I think it's Circus of Fear, which has a great character. It has Christopher Lee plays a masked knife thrower, which basically means Christopher Lee isn't in the film, apart from when the mask comes off briefly. Someone else, much like in Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space, where you have, I think it was the chiropodist or chiropractor of Ed Wood being Bela Lugosi. But it's a great, if you get the Brentwood version of that, it literally jumps where you go, I think we've just missed the whole of a scene, because it's just spliced together. And if you really want the authentic feel of kind of intoxicated projectionist desperately trying to keep running a drive-in cinema in Utah, those are the places to go to.
Fantastic.
I don't know if you've ever read Christopher Lee's autobiography. It was originally called Tall, Dark and Gruesome, and then it was expanded into Lord of Misrule, I think. But there's a bit in that where, having been to the circus as a small child, he starts practicing his knife throwing at a friend's house with this friend's 8-year-old daughter up against the door, and he's just chucking the knife, and they find out, and they ground him and ban him from playing with knives, right? Which I thought was terribly unfair, because it's not like I was trying to hit her.
See, that's going to be different, because when we hear the story now here, and Peter Jackson said, now this is the sound someone makes when you die, and I said, I know, because I was the most important person ever in the Second World War, and I killed everyone. And if it actually turns out, how did you really hear someone? I was knife throwing as a 5-year-old. Okay, Christopher, fair enough.
I'm sure somebody tweeted the other day a line about Christopher Lee, and it was quoting somebody saying, if he hadn't done it, his mother had invented it.
That's right. Yeah. It was his mother. Either he's done it or his mother's flown it.
Yeah.
And it's like Charles Gray said when they made The Devil Rides Out, and Charles Gray is very difficult with Christopher Lee, because when he was sharing a caravan, he says one doesn't know whether to stay outside and freeze to death or go in and be bored to death. So much as I do love Christopher Lee though as well, because of doing all those impersonations of Tweety Pie and Sylvester the Cat with Peter Cushing, for that alone is a wonderful thing.
Awesome. Paul Griggs has commented saying, Big Finish tweeted today that if a post got 1,000 retweets, they'd insert a random snippet of Graham Norton into their first audio with Eccleston, which I think is brilliant.
That's a fantastic idea.
That is a great idea. I'm sure that would make sure that Eccleston never did Doctor Who again. I'd
far rather have it the other way around. I'd far rather be listening to a broadcast of just a minute with Graham Norton talking and just have Eccleston come in and tackle him to the ground. I think that'd be fantastic.
Who wouldn't want to see that? For so many reasons. We've got a nice stack of viewer questions that have come up, Who related. Kitty Messalina, what is the worst plot line of any new Who story, and why is it the moon is a fucking egg?
Now, do you know what? I mean, I'm no scientist, but I didn't mind the moon being an egg. I know the moon's not an egg, but surely the only series in which the moon can be an egg is Doctor Who. There's some, because obviously Doctor Who has inspired many fine scientists, people who've gone on to have an interest in the great realities of science and stuff. There's something to be said about being a bit thick like me. I can have the moon as an egg. Yeah, it's fine. I can make that work. So I feel I'm always a bit defensive of the underdog as well. So because lots of people's sort of go-to is to go, the moon's... I'll tell you what the worst plotline of Doctor Who of all time is, if we're talking about the moon is an egg territory. It's Captain Yates ever standing a chance having a romance with Jo Grant and the other way round. That's stillborn the minute that they hit the screen, isn't it? Do you think these two look like they're ever going to get it on? Never in a million years. I don't think.
That was of an era, though, where sort of like not particularly good-looking men of a certain age on TV were going out with much younger 20-year-old sort of good-looking women.
I just never quite get the impression that Captain Yates's bread is buttered on the Joe Grant side, shall we say.
Right, Toby, you are always saying these things. Absolute nonsense. You said exactly the same thing about Peter Wingard in Jason King. And I will not have it. That was something I was so excited. Just at the beginning of lockdown, they had a huge auction. Did any of you see a huge auction of Peter Wingard memorabilia? Basically everything he had ever owned, including things like a BASF E180 cassette, which he taped the episode of Lenny Henry's Chef that he appeared in. That was in the auction and went for about a tenner. A selection of receipts. Both Mark Gatiss and I really were eyeing up the toupee, because his toupee was available, and lots of kind of paintings he had around his house of lovely ladies. So, you know, where these rumours come from about Peter Wingard, I have no idea.
So Alan, I mean, we come to this a bit later on today with the last show that's on as part of this stack with hated New Who stories. Which one do you loathe?
Well, can I just say, by the way, I always kind of bought Peter Wingard as a heterosexual, because the first thing I remember seeing him in was A Taste of Brimstone, in which he does a marvellous job of this very lascivious, dehumanising leer as he attacks Mrs. Peel with a whip. And I can only assume Mary Whitehouse was out when that episode was broadcast, because if she'd watched it, she'd have been scrabbling in the backyard trying to dig up the jar with her heart in it just so she could have a cardiac arrest. But
if
all
only
that being
Mary
said,
Whitehouse had been out, she wouldn't have been so angry all the time. That might have been the cause.
Very true.
But it's
thanks to
interesting
lockdown,
thing
we are
when
now
you
all
mentioned-
the National Viewers and Listeners Association. Yeah,
because I would
But,
agree with Wingard, and I think there's a Clive James. I remember talking about Frankie Howard. Now Frankie Howard, we immediately, but he said, when we were, watching those things, and he was always, lascivious over all of these different kind of slave girls, etc. And if you watch it, you go, yeah, without now knowing, you wouldn't immediately go, oh yeah. I don't think anyway.
I'm from Shropshire in the middle of the countryside. This is not a lie. We were surprised when we found out Freddie Mercury was gay. I mean, now the evidence is all there, but at the time, I didn't know. I didn't know such things. So,
You know about George Michael, right?
Well, yes, I've heard, but he was singing songs about ladies. I think.
Yet.
He's
If
still
you mention one
wham.
of the Bay City
He's still wham.
Rollers, he's fine.
Nice. Robin.
yeah.
You're
in
Alan.
point of fact, I was gonna-
Alan. You've not-
Sorry,
yeah.
I was going to agree with your questioner, Kitty Messalina. I was very upset with the whole moon being an egg thing, because, of course, the problem with that is that if the moon's got a dragon inside it that then lays another moon, you require either a massless moon or a massless dragon, which itself contains either a moon or a dragon which has identical mass to the original moon, and so on forever. But then Doctor Who logic kicked in after a few years, and I thought, wait a minute, what if it's just a dimensionally transcendental egg? Which was very irritating, because now I've got nothing to be angry about.
So very quick, TARDIS Glitch has given his least favourite old and new. Fear Her is bloody terrible, and says, why did they have to have an evil Bertie Bassett as the villain in the Happiness Patrol? I think the poor 80s production values, which blighted Sylvester McCoy's otherwise brilliant era, I think.
No, it's because it's a satire about being given things that you think are good for you, because they're all saccharine sweet and press all those particular short, quick fix bubbles and candy and sweetness and pink and garishness seems to be a quick fix and a surface a thing of service greatness, under which was this sort of boiling evil despotic thing. It was a satire on Thatcherism and capitalism and all sorts of other things. That's why TARDIS Glitch.
That's you told. That's you told. Robin, your least favourite New Who story?
I don't have one, because I watch it with my son, and I'm absolutely, genuinely, I'm fine with everything, really. I don't get wound up by it, because I've got so many things to be wound up about in the world. I do like, and this is very broad, is I like the period of time where they had adventures. And I do feel that there have been periods of time in the new Doctor Who where I think the two things is sometimes the underlining of points has been a little bit overt. I think one of the joys of science fiction in the 50s, 60s and 70s is very often for so many people who were outsiders, etc., you could see there was a story there for you that also tapped into you. I think it's quite overt now. But I'm very relaxed about the whole thing.
The comment section, people aren't relaxed about the whole thing. Kids who saying, see also the Robin Hood episode. Capaldi was great, but he was really let down by a lot of the scripts, particularly in his first series. I will have to agree with you there, Kitty. Keep the questions coming in. We've got a nice stack, but we'll come back to those in a second. Next up, quite a good one to ponder on this. Has being a Doctor Who fan, or fan of any sci-fi, ever got you laid?
Well, it's got me married, so no.
Do you know what? That was beautiful because for a moment I was in On the Buses. That was one of the most wonderful things to see. You, oh God, I can't believe it. Yeah, I just want to have a pickled egg. Oh God. Who was that wonderful actor? Michael. You'll remember, Toby.
Michael Robbins.
Michael Robbins. Yeah, that was such. That is
Richard Mace from The Visitation.
So good, so good, and
Matthew Waterhouse. Well, when he was in Doctor Who in The Visitation, apparently he spent the whole thing going, This is terrible. It's the worst thing I've ever been in. And Matthew Waterhouse was like, you were in On the Buses.
On the Buses is quite remarkable because I think they repeated that at some point recently, and I'd never realised that the films are very much the Lawrence of Arabia of the early 70s British film industry compared to the sitcom, where there's just obviously not the time for retakes. If Doris Hare forgets what she's doing, that doesn't matter. Someone's dropped a pan, they won't notice.
Because you see a boom mic coming into shot, that happened a lot.
Yeah. Oh, it's just, it's such a remarkable show. And as you mentioned before as well, that very strange thing where for some reason 17-year-olds are enormously attracted to 63-year-old men.
Yeah. I know. It's mad. It's mad.
If we ever wondered if Brexit was going to happen, we merely had to remember that the most successful film at the British cinema in, I think, 1971 was On the Buses. More successful than anything else that came out that year. More successful than I think it would have been on Her Majesty's Secret Service. The most successful movie was On the Buses.
Oh, dear. If you're talking about you living with your dad and watching a lot of ITV3, has he found Talking Pictures TV?
Oh, I took him there. Oh, Talking Pictures for me is an absolute joy because there are just certain actors that... Reginald Beckworth, and I know that will mean something to you, Toby. Reginald Beckworth, there was a whole week where every single day... They didn't call it a Reginald Beckworth season because technically it wasn't. But every single day, wonderful actor. And if you don't know him, look him up now. You will immediately recognise him. I think he was in one of the... Not necessarily a Carry On film, but he's definitely...
He's in Scott of the Antarctic and he's in The Day the Earth Caught Fire if you're... He's the landlord of the pub in The Day the Earth Caught Fire.
That's right, Lease of Life. And he was one of those actors that was just, we need someone to do, it's a good scene, it's only one scene, but we want someone, and Reginald Beckworth died very young, unfortunately, but that's what I love about Talking Pictures, is it means a whole day of going, oh God, what's her name? You know, she was in the, she was in the thing with that man.
And of course, when those actors died very young, they still looked 75. So they clearly lived. They clearly lived a life. They packed more in, shall we say?
And there is tonight, I should say, at some point. I think Black Sunday's on, which is quite an interesting 70s thriller with Bruce Dern.
Oh, awesome! Next question: rank the following companions worst to best: Rose Tyler, Joe Grant, Jamie McCrimmon, Yasmin Khan. Adric.
Can I just say there's a little element, and I know these are supposed to be awkward questions, where people are encouraging us to dump on Doctor Who or to say something's terrible about it. And I took a vow about a year ago that to take a leaf out of Roger Moore's book, and say if you can't say anything nice about something, don't say anything at all. So
I'm glad
so
you
I
took
know
that
that's
leaf out of that book, because if you'd taken that leaf out of the Making of Live and Let Die book, that would mean you would merely always shit yourself when doing a speedboat scene. Which I remember could not believe that when I read that when I was 13. That wonderful book, which I think has been republished quite recently, of him talking about making Live and Let Die. And then I shut myself. And it's when you're 12, you go, Roger Moore did that.
That's blown my mind. But if you say that this is like a 5-person ranking, but out of all companions ever, so it's not necessarily dumping.
Right. Okay. Does that mean I have to go
Why
first?
don't we say from best to very best?
Yes.
From very best to best. So I'll start at the top. I think my favourite of all, I'm a sucker for Rose Tyler. I love Joe Grant. I love Jamie McCrimmon. So they definitely be my top 3. And then I think I'll probably go, I was the wrong age for Adric, you see. But when I was a kid, they went through a phase. It's a bit like, 17-year-old girls fancying 60-year-old men. Whenever they put somebody who was supposed to appeal to me, so I think Adric was meant to appeal to me because he was a teenager. I didn't want to say a teenager. I didn't want to be Luke Skywalker. I wanted to be Han Solo. So whenever they put a kid in something, I just if I want to be them, so I'm resentful of them. Not that I want to be them because I aspire to be like them. They're just in my way. So I'm afraid because of my childhood antipathy towards Adric, I'd go Yaz, who I think is underused and I think is a very good actress. I'll go Yaz and then Adric. But that's no disrespect to Matthew or to Adric, because I still love that era and that show. But at the time, he was in my way. I didn't want a precocious youth. I had enough of that in the mirror.
That's what I love, that even at the age of 11, you were watching Doctor Who go, should be me up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Playing that part. You've been an actor for so long.
I was in the womb was a green room.
Yeah.
Is it my turn yet? I've been.
Jay, Dragonaut has given their ranking best to very best. Jamie, Joe, Yaz, Adric, Rose.
Oh.
See,
Alan.
Adric, what I would say is, because of the quality of the death scene, because that was something at a point where suddenly we had these tremendously bleak episodes. I know I'm stretching a little bit over a few years there, but having been through Blake 7 and then Sapphire and Steel, which has this incredibly dark conclusion to it, and then Adric, and you both will know, all three of you will know far better than me, whether any other assistant had kind of died in a sack.
Well,
I know Louise Jameson said she would much rather Leela, that very strange departure of it's all right, Doctor, I've decided to get married and settle down. Sorry, what, Leela? And she really wanted to die saving the Doctor while stabbing someone.
Yeah, well, at the time, it was the sort of thing that Doctor Who didn't do. It was shattering. And then, of course, we got all the Radio Times 20th anniversary special and Doctor Who celebration that said, oh, yes, Adric's died, but there are other companions who've died. Because at the time, they made a big thing. There were no companions ever died before. You went, God, which companions died? And they went, Sarah Kingdom and Katarina. And you went, oh, I've never heard of them. Who are they? And then you read about them and went, yeah, okay, companions is a bit of a stretch. But because, they were... they were both in one story, and Katarina was in half of the last episode of the previous one. So I think I think history has rather sexed up their parts.
Is this comment from Neil? Does this ring a bell with anybody? That apparently Adric was supposed to be an artful dodger type of a character.
That was what that's what he was supposed to be packaged as, this lovable rogue. Who instead who then, and I think they tried to do that by having sort of cheekily stealing food, but they make it sort of quite greedy a couple of times. In State of Decay, this nice old woman takes him in and says, here's some soup. We haven't got much, but you can have some soup. And he goes, yes, have you got any cheese with this? Is this supposed to be sort of lovable, is it? And then in Black Orchid, where nobody's quite got enough to do because it's only a 2-parter and Nissa's already got a double, so she's doing plenty. They think, what can we make Adric do to endear him to the viewers? Let's just make him really greedy. And he basically just spends the whole thing nicking from the buffet. Yeah, but that was what the production team viewed as lovable roguery at the time, I think.
Nice. Alan, your ranking.
I don't think, compared to the actual Artful Dodger, the image of Adric buggering about the universe, singing cockney songs about quadratic equations. Thank God we were spared it, in all honesty.
You got a nick a vol-au-vent or two.
I sort of I agree with what Toby said about when I was a kid, I never liked kids in things because kids are powerless and have little agency and are totally hemmed in by the agents around them, the adults around them. And well, no, that's my life. That's not what I want to see. I want to see people doing interesting stuff, not their bloody homework. So I agree with that. Yaz Khan, now again, as Toby says, has been underwritten. And of course, the fact is that so far in the series we've had, most of the emphasis has been on the familial relationship between Graham and Ryan. So hopefully we'll see her come into her own in the next series. Jamie McCrimmon's always good for a laugh. You can't criticise Jamie. Joe Brown. So again, see, this is all before my time, but Joe was probably the first of the Liz Sladen style companions and deserves a lot of credit for that. Rose Tyler. Now, I was one of those miserable killjoys who, when Billie Piper was cast, oh, for Christ's sake, they've picked a teen pop star. She's going to be bloody. They've got Christopher bloody Eccleston as the Doctor and some pop. Oh God, this is going to be. And she was brilliant. And I didn't learn the lesson.
What do you mean?
Exactly the same thing about Catherine Tate. Sorry?
What do you mean one of those? That was everyone I've ever met. Every Doctor Who film I know was going, oh, they've ruined it already!
Yeah,
see,
well, you know an awful lot of wrong people, Toby. That's all I can say. I'm pleased to say that Ms. Piper proved me wrong and in spades. And also she's had the good taste to divorce Lawrence Fox, the cunt. So I'd probably put her at the top of my list.
That's great. How Chris Evans don't seem like the worst
of
Rexes.
Interesting about Billie Piper was I had a few years before with Danny Robbins, amongst others, who's got a very good show on Radio 4 at the moment, investigating poltergeist. We wrote this cartoon, which was basically, because I could do a John Peel voice, it was John Peel as a kind of Time Lord having to find the 12 talisman of rock. And each episode was, and the partners that we gave, the assistants we gave, it's very much in a Doctor Who style. The assistants were the dandy highwayman, Adamant, who was going to be one of the TARDIS assistants, and the other was teen pop star Billie Piper. So I was like, looking back, that was one of my, I presume someone saw my notes and I had I imagine Russell T Davies went, what's this crappy old bit of paper that's got an idea for an animation that's never going to be made? I reckon I could have a little look at that. Billie Piper, good idea. So I think I'm probably responsible. I think he looked at a bin in TV Centre in Wood Lane, and I can't help but feel that I was very important, integral, I'd even say.
And of course, he discarded the bit of paper with Adamant still on it, and then you just heard in the background this Disney executive moving slowly across the ground.
Yeah. As usual with this show in the comments, things go into a weird tangent that I didn't bank on before I started. John Cooper loves talking pictures. He says it's ace. Today they had Cup Fever from the 50s with Bernard Cribbins as a copper. The unofficial prequel to Dalek Invasion of Earth movie.
I must throw in as well, watch out for Public Eye, which is with Alfred Burke, which is fantastic. It is this, the plot last week was actually a double whammy plot. Alfred Burke had to go to the opticians, and there was a rude woman who ran the opticians. Now, that was not enough, though. On top of that, he had to investigate some people who wanted to do hire purchase on a freezer. Right, so it was a double whammy of a plot, and it is brilliant for having this. But what I was going to say is the person who played the assistant to the policeman, who was played by Ray Smith, who later went on to be in Dempsey and Makepeace, was Liz Sladen, who has a very small part in it, but is quite often. So if they repeat that episode, if you look up and you think, what's in the Radio Times? Oh, this sounds good. It's about some people trying to hire purchase freezers and an investigation around that. You will see that Liz Sladen's in it as well.
And Alfred Burke's brilliant. Public Eye's brilliant. Alfred Burke's one of the great television actors. He's so good. He's so good. And some of Public Eye there's an episode where Paul Rogers comes around to him and basically says, I'm going to kill myself. And Alfred Burke doesn't want to know. And it's a really, brilliantly acted two-hander between both of those actors, neither of whom have ever been in Doctor Who. So I'm just showing I'm not a one-trick pony.
And there was also an episode where Peter Sallis was a Lothario, which was very exciting. It turns out he's seen women all over the shop. He's got
The voice of
everywhere.
Wallace?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
My trousers are wrong. Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for that. On to our next question. Have you ever fancied any character in Doctor Who? If so, do tell. I will freely admit to having a crush on Ace.
I wanted to marry the aforementioned. I have a Doctor Who magazine which had the archives of the Time Warrior, and there was a picture of Elizabeth Sladen dressed in her Robin Hood gear, a black and white, and it took up half the page. And I decided then that I would marry that woman. And do you know what? I never even met her. But it's good to have a hope.
I'm so disappointed though. There was a Time Warrior, and at that point, of course, I didn't know whether Sontarans were sex or gender specific, and I was really hoping that you had a thing for a Sontaran. I'm so disappointed.
I mean, yes. What? I keep an eye on his probic vent, but I don't know whether that is my birth story as well. So. Not only was it when I was born, it was almost also when something else within me was awakened. So I shall probably die watching the Time Warrior as well, just to bring it all full circle.
Going back to the Peter Sallis comment, Paul Griggs says, "Cracking crumpet, Gromit." Worthy of this, Paul. There you go. You get the first and possibly the only rim shot of the show. Alan, what about you?
Yeah, well, I've introduced a panel in the past with Sophie Aldred by saying, on roughly this day in 1988, a 50-kilogram teenage girl attacked the Dalek with a baseball bat, and I realised I was heterosexual. So I'm very much in the same camp as you are, Alex.
Good. For similar reasons, yes. In fact, I did it earlier today. If you look at the playback, you can see me occasionally glaze over. As I'm slightly in awe and trying to hold it together. So has everyone answered this one?
Robin hasn't.
I think because by the time that I stopped watching Doctor Who, it was too early on. So I don't think there ever was anyone. It reminded me though when you're talking about that bit of glazing over. I remember doing a gig years ago with Russell Howard when he was comparing, and Michaela Strachan was in the audience because it was in Bristol where the BBC Wildlife, and he basically kept going on stage going, "Oh God, I can't believe Michaela Strachan's here!" And he couldn't stop doing this, and I was like, "Please stop mentioning," and then she had to leave in the interval because it had become too embarrassing. But it was really weird because he literally just suddenly became so overly captivated with this incredible, as I'm sure we've all had moments where people that we particularly loved when we were kids, especially with Doctor Who and things like that anyway, just people that you really admired, and you suddenly go, this is weird, we're in the same room. But it was that bit that because it was actually on stage, and you're just going, oh, stop mentioning that Michaela Strachan's in the room because I think she's going to feel uncomfortable now. I think it's ended up in a bit of an odd situation. And so the only way out of it for him was to become one of the most successful comedians in the country and become a multi-millionaire.
More crimes on me now, Michaela!
Alan, your wife has let us know all of her Doctor Who crushes. I think we've got enough time to show them all. Fifth Doctor, of course, she also mentions Will Barton, who we're going to see later on today, Marcus Gilbert and David Tennant. That's quite a succinct list, Eric.
Yes, but now I know that Alan has had to dress up as them all.
We only see his library. We never see his wardrobe.
How's your midge, Alan?
I misheard that. So we've had to go full low, and I've been at her with the wet celery off my lapel and everything. It's been a nightmare.
Wow, on that mental image that is in my brain, we'll get on to the next question. Kitty Messalina has let us know hers. Tennant, as on a crush list. Amy Pond, I think everyone has with Amy Pond. Rose Tyler, Jack Harkness, Sims Master, Missy, and then the latest incarnation of the Master. That's one. You've been very busy, Kitty. You've been very busy indeed. Next question. You can only save one duo from certain death. Yogo and Lightfoot or Pip and Jane Baker?
Oh, that's tricky, isn't it?
Well, I think it's rather unfair to pit a fictional couple against a real people.
Well, it's one to ponder on. If it was certain death for one, you can only save one couple. Gut instinct, Alan. Who would you say?
I would say Jago and Lightfoot, because to the best of my knowledge, one of them is still alive, whereas Pip and Jane are both dead. So, given that there is only one answer that has any possibility of succeeding, I'm going to go with that.
Oh, he was all fine with having the moon as an egg a while ago, and now he's got literal again. I believe this. I would go with Jago and Lightfoot because that's one of my favourite stories of all time, as well.
And I'm afraid I'm going to have to make it a sixsome. I'm very fond of Jago and Lightfoot. They're responsible for some of the scene where Jago serves supper to Leela and she doesn't use any cutlery and picks up the joint of meat with her hands, and he has to go along with it because he's being polite. And Jago has some brilliant lines, including "a money spider, don't kill it," and all of his sort of Leonard Sax style stuff. And he calls Casey his factotum. It has to be Jago and Lightfoot for two characters who were only in one story to have lasted so long, and of course they get their big finish spin-off. And both delightful fellows in real life as well. I never had the pleasure with Pip and Jane, though I didn't live too far from them when I stayed in Ruislip. They have their place too, but very much Jago and Lightfoot.
Legends. A clean sweep. So we've got time for just a couple more questions before we go to scoot off. Mixing up the fandom. Who do you think would win in a fight between the Cybermen and the Borg? Both very similar creatures.
Very similar. Some might even say too similar.
Yeah.
Which, obviously, I mean, the Cybermen came first in the. So, do you think they'd have the edge?
Fair, when the Cybermen in the early days, they weren't quite as much like the Borg, were they? I mean, the Cybermen of the old days.
Well, I think the intent was that what they were made out of wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I think in the mind they were like the Borg, whereas in the body they were like sellotape and socks. With an organ.
The back office of an Oxfam shop, yeah.
Yeah, but you see, I love those first Cybermen. I'm a Doctor Who fan. I see body horror where other people see sticky back plastic, and I win because I see the episodes as they were intended to be seen. I love those first Cybermen. Go on.
I was to say they brought the Mondasian Cybermen back under Peter Capaldi, I thought, with great effect.
Yeah,
I thought particularly the scene in the hospital where one of the Cybermen is just saying pain, 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 and Bill turns the thing and he stops saying pain, and you think, oh, it's a morphine drip, and then you listen to it again, and you go, oh no, she's just turned his volume down. Yeah,
great.
Yeah,
it's great.
Jason Thompson saying classic Cybermen would lose every time, which I disagree with, because Mondasian Cybermen I think are really, really brute force and quite strong. I mean, they just strike me as having the weight advantage.
Yeah, well, and when as a youngster, when you read about the Cybermen, there was a whole blurb in the Target books about saying they have the strength of 10 men and they are indestructible and all that sort of thing. So it was quite a shock when in Attack of the Cybermen, one got shot with a normal gun and green stuff spurted out, and then I think one sneezed and its head fell off. And so they gradually got less. When you hurt once, one saw a tweet that it didn't like, and it fell to bits. But back in the day, they were impervious to everything except for whatever was the thing in this story. So I think radiation in the 10th planet a weather machine in the moon base and blah 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 blah. I just think the Cybermen, out of loyalty to Doctor Who, if you're asking me to write it, the Cybermen are going to win, and as they do so, deliver us a lawsuit for theft of an idea.
Blatant.
It's hard, that, isn't it? Because I'm trying to think of the actors. So I'm thinking of Alice Krieg, who is a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
And then my dad's currently reading Derek Sherwin's autobiography.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there's a Cybermen, there's a Borg, but I'm going to go with the Borg.
Right.
Alice Krieg's a great actor.
Yeah, just check your dad's okay when he's finished Derek Sherwin's autobiography. Because there's some funny ideas in there. That's all I'm saying. Don't let him get too influenced.
Do you know what? There's a certain generation of actors that when I see their biographies, I go, yeah, I'll probably skip chapter 13. Yeah, that's probably for the best.
Paul and Kathleen agreeing with you all the way there, saying the Borg all the way. In defence of the Cybermen, you belong to us, you should be like us, is perhaps their most chilling line. Yes.
Yeah, good quote, Jason. Yeah. I'm liking Jason's skills. He's
Cybermen scare me more than the Borg.
I also think there's a thing that, not if they're in Revenge of the Cybermen, though, which still has, I think, the worst soundtrack of any classic Doctor Who. It seems to have a kind of almost a jaunty sing-along nature. Long before Adric was going to be singing about food, glorious food, there is something very bizarre about that soundtrack to Revenge of the Cybermen.
Kerry Blyton, that musician, that composer also does Death to the Daleks, where he thinks the way to increase the Daleks' menace is to have a slightly eccentric, I think, clarinet and oboe thing going on, where instead of it sort of being, oh my God, it's the Daleks, it's more sort of, oh, these are crazy guys. Are they going to do a waltz? Now that you've just done is the incidental is the Rugby Today music that also accompanies Patrick Moore and George Layton when they're comedy Australians in the Sweeney.
Yep.
There we go.
I would say one of Moa's lower points, to be honest.
And it's a misjudged, isn't it? Because they're comedy villains and then they get involved in a really horrible, violent shootout at the end.
Yeah.
Interesting point from TARDIS Glitch. What about the Cyber Masters? What do you think they'd be like in a fight? Because they would just regenerate and come back.
I think TARDIS Glitch, Josh. I think he's got this all wrong, because what people are neglecting here is that the Cybermen are all business. Everything about the Cybermen is absolutely dedicated to the production of more Cybermen. Whereas the Borg, they get distracted, they fanny around, they've got time for at least one Borg to have tits. Who needs those when you're going to conquer the galaxy with cybernetics? So no, I think the Borg, they go after Shakespearean actors so they can absorb them, and that all goes wrong for them. So no, I think the Borg are too shilly-shallying, and the Cybermen would roll over them in a very slow, very cardboard blitzkrieg.
And there we have it. I think that is the definitive now. So, gents, this is almost at the end of the time. This has gone far too quickly. But before we wrap up and go off, has any of you got anything that you'd like to plug, even if it is just your socials? So, Toby, we'll come to you first.
Well, I've used lockdown to produce some podcasts, which I'd be grateful if you could check out. One is called Happy Times and Places, in which I challenge a friend of mine to make me watch a Doctor Who story, and they choose their favourite things about it, and I have to see if I can guess what their favourite things about it are. So it means that I watch it with a positive view, but I also throw in facts and observations and trivia and all of that sort of stuff. There's also one called Too Much Information, which is basically a blow-by-blow account of the making of every single episode of Doctor Who from the beginning, and the detail is appalling. And then there's one called Indefinable Magic, which is a sort of thought for the day, whimsical essay on some aspect of Doctor Who, and they're all under the umbrella title Toby Haydoke's Time Travels. They've got their own Twitter feed, Haydoke Podcasts. I'm on Twitter as Toby Haydoke. And there should be plenty there for you.
Excellent, thank you. Robin?
Oh, well, I was just going to mention I've been making a new series of documentaries called An Uncanny Hour about things like Deathline and Ealing's Dead of Night, and the next one is about the John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy. We've got Stuart Lee and Rhys Shearsmith and various others on that. So that's all over at cosmicshambles.com, where I also always do book shambles with my mate Josie Long, and we've done Alan Davis recently and Marion Keynes, who was absolutely delightful. I mean, both of them were absolutely delightful. Alan Davis's autobiography, by the way, I would highly recommend. It is a very moving and at times extremely sad, but a really wonderful piece of work. It's called Just Ignore Him, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I've also got a new series called Tips for Existence about finding purpose in the purposeless universe with people like Tim Minchin and Andrean and Neil Gaiman and others.
Awesome. And Alan?
Mind Warp, we're doing this all in aid of Mind. If you haven't donated yet, the QR code is over there. If you'd be so very kind, we'd be very grateful. That will take you to our PayPal. There's no set donation amount. Every amount is gratefully welcome. And you've still got time, if you've not donated yet, you've still got time till the next prize draw. So please do so. And thank you very much for joining us, Toby and Robin. You've been very generous.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, gents.
Thanks.
So myself and Alan, when the credits have done, we're dashing off because we're in the next show, which is starting in about 30 seconds.
Have a lovely time, you two. I hope you have a lot of fun doing that.
Thanks. So we're not being rude.
And thank you for that marvellous Louise Jameson interview as well. Everybody's had a lot of good things to say about that. Quite right.
Delight to talk to her. We're going to talk so much more about the underarm pubic hair wigs that we started to deal with on Tenko.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Maybe even a cottage industry springing up as we watch.
Stick around for Impro Provocateur next with Alan, myself, and special guest Mike McShane, who will be joining us for that. But gents, thanks again. Until the next time, we'll be back tomorrow night. I'll fight for the regular one. Stay awkward. Take care.